recording. Do you remember the start of the Depression? Was it 1929?
When did we move to the farm, the Berkey farm? After the coal mine shut down in Ashtola, Dad lost his job as an engineer on the coal for.
Wouldn't you say that was the beginning of the Depression?
That
I was.
I couldn't have been more than
12 and 14. Put 14 years on 1912.
14. That's 1926.
Well, that's when we moved to the farm. I finished 1 year in high school when we moved to the farm.
I think that could be when the beginning of the Depression was, but the crash of 1929 didn't come until 29, the big stock markets.
Yeah. Okay. What do you remember about the Depression?
Well, to me it was like Pearl said, that Dad had gone to Cleveland to see if he could find work, and there was no work around home, around Windber, Johnstown, that he could get a job. And I can recall a lot of people were having trouble getting a job, and there was a lot of people that didn't have things to eat. Also, that we moved on to the farm and put out a big truck patch. We had a couple of cows, and we raised chickens, and we were fortunate enough, as Pearl said, that a grocery store, which is a small grocery store as compared to them here in 1995.
More like a general store?
Yeah, it had everything, but in small amounts.
Groceries.
It was basically a grocery store. But we were able to get feed for, evidently, from what Pearl said, feed for the chickens and the cows. And we lived on the farm, and we were never hungry. We always had something to eat. In fact, relatives came to our place, especially on weekends. And we always had plenty of chicken and food for everybody, potatoes.
Charlie's came and stayed 3 weeks one time. I think that was after you were out on the Lincoln Highway, and stayed because he had no work. Jim and Aunt Mary came and stayed
Between our place and Cal's.
For how long?
Quite a while. But
And how about the people walking there?
yeah, there was a lot of people that had lost their jobs, lost their homes, and were out on the highways just walking and more or less what we called bumming. Food, they'd stop along the road to get something to eat. They would stop in at your house and you would feed them. I can remember Mother feeding hitchhikers, we called it hitchhikers, along the Lincoln Highway.
And her main food for them was egg sandwich. Wasn't it?
Egg sandwich?
It wasn't it?
I can't remember.
As I understand it, that was what they fed them. And they were glad to get it.
I'll say.
Yeah. So, it was by the grace of the company store and the...
Well, don't say company store, because at that time there was a company store that was a bigger store, but you didn't run up big bills on them unless you worked for them. This was a little Italian man and his wife who had a little family store. Who had a family store, and remember Julius Fugenzi.
Oh, I know him.
Who,
You sure?
I do.
and Julius told Wilbert one time. He said that was an honest man. He wouldn't have had to pay me for those groceries, but he paid every cent of it. It took him the rest of his life.
I remember Julius Fugenzi because Dad stopped by his place. Didn't he have a big cage on the outside? He had monkeys in there one time. I remember Dad, it was one of Dad's stops that he took me,
It was a stop.
Yeah, it would be a stop for,
and he had a big cage out there with a couple monkeys in it, and then we would go back
I
with
don't
the
know.
monkeys.
Could be.
But the name, I was just a little kid, but the name stuck in my mind. Then. So he's the one that helped your family through. Where was his store?
In Wimber, there on Graham Avenue.
Graham Avenue.
I don't know the number.
it would be,
Across from the Church of the Brethren there.
21st. It's around 19th Street.
Well, you got through the Depression.
Well, one of the things that got us through, Dad didn't stay too long in Cleveland, and we were all glad when he came home. As a matter of fact, when he come home, it seems like he brought some groceries and gifts and stuff. It was a big time. But he wasn't home very long until old Mitch McNeil, who had became a lumber company in this time, and they needed somebody to drive their engine over the mountains to haul lumber, mine ties, and props for the Wimber coal mines. So they came and got Dad, and that's how we ended up moving out on the Lincoln Highway there in Somerset County. And Dad, they paid Dad a good wage in comparison to what wages were at that time.
You remember what that was?
As I remember, it was $95 every 2 weeks. We got $95 every 2 weeks. And that's how he began taking $50 every payday would go back to Julius Fugenzi.
How much?
$50 out of that 95.
Wow. Julius Fugenzi.
Now, I don't know whether he did that every week and every week, but the times that I remember.
And he sure was perturbed with Ida Mary and Mom not continuing to buying all their groceries from Julius Fugenzi. Ida Mary began to tell Mom how she could save money by going to the A&P store there in Central City. And she used to take Mom there. But Dad didn't like that, and he even apologized to Julius Fugenzi about it.
I can remember when we lived there on the Lincoln Highway on Saturdays, we would go to Wimber. And that was like that's around 20 some mile. And back in them days, in a 1926 Model T Ford, that was a long trip. I used to sleep both ways. Anyhow, we would go to Wimber, and Dad would go buy groceries at Julius Fugenzi's. And when he bought groceries at Julius Fugenzi's, he bought groceries for Grandma Hoffer. Practically the same thing that he got for us.
Now, Grandma Hoffer, you mean?
Aunt Mary Hoffer.
Okay. Okay, bought the same for them.
He always had about as many bags of groceries for them as he did for us.
So, you got through the Depression, and things started easing up a bit. That's about the time you got married after the Depression was over by the time you got married, right?
No, we were still in Depression, I'd say, when in 36. When did the leave up?
Really, I don't think that the country, United States, began to boom until the war, until World War II started. And that was when Hitler was taking over countries in Europe, and became an aggressor over there, and one country after another would fall to his power. And about that time is when, shortly around that, in 1941, is when Japan struck Pearl Harbor. And so,
Yeah.
1935, you got married. So things were pretty tough even then. I can remember people wanting food, and especially because of the stock market crashing. I mean, they talk about a crash today. That crash back in that time was like the end of the world. And I can remember that. I was like 10, 11, 12 years old.
Yeah, Dad was graduated from high school in 30 or 29. But maybe it
How
was
about 28?
28.
I graduated in 30.
Right. Okay. So he said that well, Grandpa had money in the bank, but he lost it,
Mm-hmm.
and Grandpa Kinzey had a stroke sometime when he was 55 or something. But so that
We
was
were married when he had his stroke.
okay. So it was after that, but Grandma took them through the Depression by making quilts and selling her quilts.
Listen, Grandma Kinzey, Granddad Kinzey was a carpenter, a contractor, and at that time, carpenters could only work about 6 months out of a year, and 6 months out of the year the carpenter didn't work. She took in washing. She made. She did sewing for people. Grandma Kinzey worked hard to keep that family all her life. I mean, all their married life.
Mm-hmm.
And then after he had his stroke, he never worked again. And I still don't know how they made it. But
Well,
she was that type of person. Ingenuity? Is that the word I want?
That's a good one as far as I'm concerned.
She
We are recording again.
Oop, I'm eating.
That's all right. That's good.
You don't talk with your mouth full.
Now,
Okay, you better do all the talking.
I think I've been doing too much talking.
Sure, you've been doing all right.
we were talking about the Depression. I think we got through the Depression, didn't we? There was something else we thought about back here in the Depression. You want to recap anything while we're thinking about it? We've been talking about Grandma Kinzey working through the Depression and all that. And, well, let's get into Hitler's big deal here leading into World War II.
Maurice will have to talk about Hitler. I don't know too much about Hitler.
Well, you didn't hear anything, or say too much, but Morris said the news was kind of bringing it around. More about Hitler taking over and doing stuff out there. I talked to Uncle Morris in length about the World War II and him going over there. I was going to ask what was your impressions when the boys got drafted or into the service. Uncle Morris and Uncle Bud got taken. What were your thoughts at the time World War II was happening?
Well, I was just numb. You didn't know. What could you think? You were drafted. You had to go. They went. You just prayed they'd get home safe. And yet at the same time you was praying for them, you knew there was others losing their lives.
I talked to him about what his experiences were over there, so we don't need to go into that again. But when the guys came home from the army after the war, what changes did you see in them from before and after that you noticed?
Well, I'll tell you. I left home at 18 to work, to go in the hospital as a nurse. And the boys were, see, I was close to 10 years older than Bud, so therefore he was only about 8, and Maurice was only about 10. That I didn't know my brothers as closely as if I had been living at home with them. And till they came back, I was married, and so that I didn't observe changes in them because I really didn't know them as a person before. Just you loved them as brothers, but you didn't know them as persons, really.
Okay, when they came back, did the war affect them in their behavior around the house as you noticed things happening like loud noises? Was there any shell shock on any of them that you see?
See, I wasn't around them that much.
Okay, I was trying to bring out, you had said something about Uncle Bud being shell shocked.
Oh, well, his wife, I don't know if it was what you'd call it shell shock. Della told me that he would waken at night in nightmares of memories of the war, of what went on when he was over there. That was only hearsay. I didn't see it.
Okay. Tell me about what you know about the religious life of your family. Now, Uncle Maurice told me what he had observed. What did you observe in your family as going to church, and who was involved in it, and how were you kids taken to church, Sunday school? How did you get involved in the church?
Well, I only know we didn't have Bible reading and prayer as a family, but Mother and Dad saw that we had neighbors who went to the Rummel Church of the Brethren faithfully, and from the time I 8 years old on anyhow, these neighbors took us with them to church and Sunday school. We were not taught, I don't remember any, just in our living we were taught of God and Christ and the meaning of Christmas and Easter, but as to any religious teaching as such, only in our daily lives as a family. We were taught right and wrong, and we must have been taught of Jesus and our Savior, because as long as I can remember, that's what I believed.
How old were you when you accepted Christ as your Savior?
10.
10. Did it happen at church? Or
Evangelistic meetings, we went with the neighbors, and
what church? Was this at Rummel?
Church of the Brethren
At
in
Rummel.
Rummel. What do you didn't go with us, did you?
No. We were baptized by John Graham.
Oh, at the church, Berkey.
If you wanted to leave a message for your family to remember you by, or to leave a message for them to guide them, what kind of message would you want to give them?
The belief and acceptance of Jesus as Savior, and in that believing He is in you, because the Bible says, Jesus said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments, and my Father will love you, and we will come and make our abode with you. The belief in Jesus and living, giving yourself to Him and letting Him live in you and through you. And everything else in life will fall into place, like you read seminaries of how to be successful, how to win friends, and those kinds of seminars, but everything will fall in place if you have Christ as your Savior. And you will come to the close of your life in peace, and confidence and security, and I call that success. And all this is in Christ. Because He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and that's the only way to have peace and these blessings of confidence and success is my idea.
Okay, I had asked you that question, Uncle Maurice, down there, and you said it kind of took you by surprise. You didn't know what to say. You've had a year and a half to think about it. If you were to leave a message for your kids or for your grandchildren, have you been able to come up with something that you...
Well, I haven't really thought anything about that since then, except that I know that Matthew is connected with the church and their belief is in Christ. Michael is a little, I think something's going to have to happen sometime in his life to bring him, to waken him up to be a follower of Jesus Christ. But I think they have to live by the Bible, the teachings of the Bible, and use the Lord's Prayer, the Ten Commandments, the Beatitudes as a guidance in their life.
I can hear Wilbur singing as he heartily did, cling to the Bible, my boy. Do you remember? Out of Townsend's quartet book.
Yeah, when the guys would sing together.
Yeah, cling to the Bible, my boy.
Yeah. As a family, how do you feel now when you look back on your family? What's your feelings about the family? How you fit in, your relation to your brothers and sisters? How do you feel about that?
How did I fit in with my brothers and sisters?
Yeah, how do you feel, and how was your family relationship one to another?
I think that our relationship one to another was good, except that we didn't get together enough. We didn't visit one another enough. And I feel lots of times that I've left my brothers and sisters down, especially Matthew, Maurice, or Bud and Bill. Because if I would have been awake and not spending so much time on my job, I would have seen that I could have been help to them. I think if Bud wouldn't have smoked, he'd be living yet. Bud had a healthy body. I think Bill had health problems through his life, but he had other problems that come up that I wasn't there for him like I felt since he died that I should have been. But I love my brothers and sisters,
But we just,
and they were good to me.
we had the feeling and we loved them, but we didn't express it.
That's right. You're right there. And this is where a lot of families break down, is the communications between brothers to brother. And I can't say for sisters to sisters. But I think this is where a family breaks down, is, well, if they want to be like that, I can be that way too, you know? You ever hear it?
Oh, yeah. So,
But as for changing their lifestyle, most brothers and most people don't want changed. It's like Eva went in one time to Bertha Man Bill's, and Bill had a case of beer and was handling it around. I don't know if he was drinking it right then, but she said to him about having this beer and all, and he soon told her that it was none of her business what he did, and he would do as he pleased. So even as you think you may have left him down, had it actually happened, that was Bill's attitude toward things. You may not have, I mean, you can relieve your conscience, I think, that,
I never knew Bill had beer in the house.
yeah, that he made his own choices.
Yeah.
And no matter what you'd have done, it's doubtful if you could have changed it. And have you ever tried to talk to anybody that's smoking and tried to get them to quit? I don't think
you
you could
used
have
to
done
smoke.
much about it.
Yeah, I quit.
yeah.
Yeah,
What
but
brought you to quit?
yeah,
Well, it got to the point I didn't want to smoke around my kids. And I would smoke on the road. And I developed a little cough one time. And when you get a cold, you think you have a cough from a cold. And really what made me quit smoking was, I can remember my dad coughing. And I said, buddy, if it's come to this, one day on the way to work, from one store to another, I just took a pack of cigarettes and threw it out the window, and that was it.
didn't you have any more was
Yeah.
that your biggest problem? I mean, most people say how they have, they try and go back, and they always go back to it. Didn't you have that problem?
You gotta, when you make a commitment, you gotta keep it.
Yeah.
But I know this is the biggest problem, when you go back and smoke that first cigarette. In between all that time, before I threw that pack away and said, this is it, I had cut way back on smoking because I only smoked to and from work, and I didn't smoke on the weekend. But when I went fishing, I smoked a cigar. And I just never went back to it. I might have tried smoking a cigar later on sometime when I went fishing, and I didn't feel good over it, so that took care of that.
Yes. I know when I was talking to you, I asked you when you accepted Christ as your Savior, and you told me nobody had ever asked you that before. And I was the first to ask you, did you ever wonder, Mom, when he accepted Christ as his Savior? Did you ever want to ask him that?
I prayed for my brothers and sister. But I don't know as I ever wanted to ask them. I observed their lives.
Well,
And as I can't remember when I was first influenced, I figured they were having the same experience.
well, why don't you tell her
Well, you're gonna catch me.
what you told me, and that way she will know firsthand.
I think I told you what comes to my mind was I was in a foxhole,
Yeah.
and the Germans had attacked us, and they come over the hill, and we were firing on them, and I happened to be took over the Browning automatic weapon from another soldier, and I was firing it, and I had to stop to reload. And as I stopped to reload, just as I turned my head down to put the load in, I don't know, a burst of bullets, or whether it was one bullet or two or three from a machine gun, hit right where my head had been. And I got the gun loaded, and I pulled up to shoot that German, but I didn't shoot him. I thought I'd just keep my eye on him. But in the meantime, I told the Lord, I'm willing to go all the way to Berlin, Germany, and go back home and marry a good Christian girl. And when I looked up, sometime during that period, I looked up, that soldier had disappeared. I didn't have to shoot him.
Well, are there any questions that you two would have for each other that maybe you wanted to ask or tell since you're here together?
Well, I want to tell her to live good and long. I want somebody with me. No going away. Like Lois tells me, we're going together.
Yes, that's how we feel, but we leave it up to God.
Yeah, we go when our time.
I have lived a good long life. At 83, I've lived beyond the 70 mark. And as much longer as God gives me, I pray I'm faithful and a good example to those around me.
Mhm.
And I may go first, and you may go first, Bud or Joe may go first. We don't know that.
This is true.
So we're here till God takes us and His will be done.
How come you always beat me?
I don't. I don't.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of anything more to put on this interview, but I think it was a good run through it. Uncle Moore said he'd remembered a lot of things on the way home the last time, but now he can't remember what they were. So,
Like I said, I'd have to start all over.
You'll just
And
have,
if I started over again, I'd start in where I am now and just backtrack all the way.
well, I tell
But-
you, keep a little notepad. And when a thought comes to you, write it down. Catherine, Roy's wife, gave the preacher a paper that Ida Mary had written thoughts that she had. And he said he didn't know whether she wrote more than one at a time, but by telling us what she had written, we could get an idea of thoughts that went through her head. Now, he didn't say it in those words.
Mhm.
So when you have these thoughts, you just write them down, and come Christmas, just stick this piece of paper in a Christmas card. And while I'm thinking of it, I think and forget, Catherine, I want to thank you for the lovely birthday card you sent me.
Why, you're
But
welcome.
the pretty things on the card, you made me feel guilty. I'm not.
She's not that bad.
You mean she's not that good, is what
Yeah.
she's saying?
Yeah.
I'll have
Yeah,
to look
but-
at that card again.
But I thank you for that
You're
card.
welcome.
I fixed my son's girlfriend's car's air conditioner the other week when she was down. They said it wasn't working, so I took it to work with me and I checked it out. And I found somebody had twisted the nut loose at the bottom to, I think, purposely damage your car. But I fixed it. Well, she sent me a thank you note, and it shows a man floating around in the water in an inner tube. And here comes a father shark and a son shark along. He says, "There, son, that is called a life preserver. That keeps the food fresh until."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, out to the cemetery, which I had to go up a hill,
I'm not going to be a part of this.
and going up the hill, they hit a bump.
Tape, Maurice.
And the back door of the hearse flew open, and the casket rolled out the back of the hearse. And down the hill, and at the base of the hill, there was a town. And that coffin rolled right down into town, and it came to a dead-end street, and the other side of the street there was a drugstore. And the coffin busted right through the door, rolled up to the pharmacist. The coffin rolled right up to the pharmacist's counter and bumped the counter. The coffin flew open, and the guy sat up in the coffin. He said to the pharmacist, "You got anything that'll stop my coughing?"
They did that on Animaniacs too.
That's right. Okay, that's as good as my potato joke.
What was that potato joke?
Oh, you don't know about the Idaho potato?
Oh, I forgot it already.
Oh, married
Girl from the red
the Missouri red potato.
Missouri? I thought it was Washington.
Washington red potato. Okay,
Yeah.
and they had a child by the name, and it was a thoroughbred potato.
Yeah.
And she grew up and wanted to get married. And she went to her father and said, "I'd like to get married." He said, "Who to?" Said, "Peter Jennings." He says, "Now listen, I'm an Idaho potato, and your mother's a Washington red potato. You're a thoroughbred potato. I don't want you marrying a commentator."
What was that other joke he said? Out there when we was over there?
About the, let me think a little
You
bit.
have to write these down. Laura.
Yes, I know. I told you I should write them down.
I don't remember them so good anymore.
Yes.
Wait till I get my.
Well, just as a matter to get things rolling, when were you born?
I was born back in 1919, November the 24th.
No, November 24th?
Yeah.
How old were you in 1938?
Oh, he'd
19.
been,
19.
19.
Thank you. Okay. So, do you know any events that they said about your birth or anything that you can remember that anybody said anything about?
All I can remember is when I got older, they said my parents had made a mistake.
That isn't what he wants, Maurice.
He wants to talk about it. This could be a comedy film.
My dad used to say,
You're not
I was
cooperating.
born up in a little place called McNeil Town, not McNeil's Camp, McNeil Town. And a crow laid these eggs on a big stump out in the back of the house, and they hatched the eggs out, and that's what they got. They got me.
Who said that?
My dad.
So you don't, no special event that you can think of that, your mother ever said or dad ever said?
About my birth?
Yeah, about the events around it?
I can't come up with anything.
Okay.
Dad,
Where do you fall in the line of children?
Well, I had two sisters and a third sister that died at birth, and I had an older brother, and I'm the fifth child.
Fifth child.
Yeah, I'm the fifth child. There was six of us.
Where did Geraldine come in at?
The
She was
third
the
girl.
oldest. Third girl.
The third child. Bill was the fourth child, I was the fifth child.
Bud was the
But what's the earliest thing you can remember in your childhood? Hey Vanessa, will you see if that coffee's done and bring us in a cup of coffee?
I'll have to fix my own.
Oh, yeah.
I have to doctor it up.
Did you make a full,
Yeah,
Did you-
right.
did
You're
you
a
make a
special
full-
coffee maker.
did you make a full pot, Joe, or just
I made 8 cups.
Did you stop that?
No, that's still going.
Dad,
Do you want to stop?
Yeah.
next time.
You ready for all this stuff? Not quite, let's take food items and put them away.
Well, did we get to the point where you were
Does it have to
trying
be-
to think of your earliest thoughts in
Earliest
your,
memories.
in your childhood?
Well, I think my earliest memories in my childhood was when we lived at Ashtola. And my dad drove the engine for the coal company. And we lived in one of the company houses. No, that's not true. We had bought a house. And we was living in it, and we had 2 cows. And the earliest thing I can remember is I was out in the yard down near where we kept the cows, and this one cow started coming towards me. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't run, and the cow was coming right at me. And I sit down at the foot of a tree, and I started my feet in the air, and started kicking at the cow. And my sisters, I don't know whether it was Ida Mary or my sister Pearl, that came and got me. That's one thing. The other thing is remembering where we lived. My dad had raised dogs. They were bird dogs. And he had a lot of the doctors and lawyers and important people from Wimber and Johnstown come to visit on Sundays and look at the dogs, and he sold some of them, dogs. In hunting season, they would come out and go hunting with my dad, and they'd come home with their bounty, like ringneck and grouse and whatever was in season for these bird dogs. My dad had, I can remember we had what we called a dog town. We had as high as 40 dogs at one time. Bird dogs, mostly bird dogs. And in other words, we were in the dog business.
That's right. I understand that Grandpa was one of the first to bring Brittany Spaniels into this country. Was that at that time or later on?
That would have to be just about around that time to bring him in, because that's about the time that the Brittany came in to. He started raising them and breeding the dogs. He bred all of these bird dogs, different kinds of bird dogs, and raised them, trained them so that they would, just at a whistle, they would change their direction in the field when they were out hunting.
Do you remember any techniques that he used for training the dogs?
Yeah, I remember one thing, so that the dog, when it retrieved the bird that they got, so that the dog wouldn't, when they bit the bird, it wouldn't damage or bruise the bird. He used to take a rubber ball and fill it full of nails and teach the dog to fetch it. He'd throw the ball out in front of the dog somewhere, and the dog would pick that up and bring it back. And by having the nails in that in, if they bit too hard, it would hurt their mouth. And that way he trained the dogs not to,
So they had an easy bite.
so they wouldn't bite hard. The other thing was, he had a whistle, a certain type of a whistle, and the dogs would go back and forth out in front of him. I can't remember now, I'm not more than 30, 40 yards, and just go back and forth. And if a dog got out too far, or too far one way, right or left, he would blow the whistle, and it would change its direction.
Dad, I remember Dad saying that Grandpa wanted the bird dogs to hold their head high, and he didn't want them to take it down low like a rabbit dog would do. Do you remember the technique he used for keeping that up?
Well, he used to take and hold the dog. He would hold the dog's tail in the dog's neck and hold the neck up, so that when it would point, once it got the scent of the bird, its tail would go up and its head would go out, and it would look out towards the direction that it sent the bird.
The technique that Dad said he used, he tied a football under the dog's neck, so that the dog sensed it. He couldn't get his head down, and that's the posture he wanted. And I just wondered if you remember that.
I don't remember that, but that's. I don't remember that exactly that way, no.
Yeah,
But that's a possibility.
yeah,
It could have been a football, it could have been something that would
yeah,
make the dog strain to keep its head up.
that's right. When did you start hunting? Did Grandpa ever get you started hunting?
Well, when we left that place and moved on to a farm over at Berkeley. And he still kept his dogs. We still raised dogs. And us boys started out learning to hunt by box trap, run box traps. And I can remember one time I went out one morning to check the box trap before we went to school. And there was something in it, but I couldn't tell what it was. It wasn't a rabbit. So I went back into the house and I got Bill and Bud, and we, all three of us, went out to check to see what was in that box trap. And we got out there, we looked down in it, and none of us knew what it was. So one of us got a club, the other got a big stone, and one of them was to dump this animal out, and we was going to kill it. And when we dumped it out, we started hitting it and pounding it with it, hit it with this stone and pounding it with the club. And here it turned out to be a skunk. Well, we missed school for about a week.
Yes. Yes, a little odor problem. Is that when you found out about tomato juice?
Huh?
Is that when you found out about tomato juice?
No, I don't know about that.
You bathe a dog in tomato juice, you take the skunk smell away.
Oh, I don't know whether we did that or not, but I don't remember that.
As growing up, did you spend much time with Grandma as a kid, or did you travel along with your dad more?
Well, I think we as little children and boys, we stayed at home pretty much. Later in life, we went traveled with my dad when it was suitable. But we lived on that farm for a while, and I guess Bill got to hunting. He got a 22. I'm not sure when he got that 22, how old he was.
Yes.
But I don't think it was while we were on the farm, because we left the farm, let's see, I was in 4th grade. I would be what, 10 years old, he would be 12. I think when he was around 12, he got a 22. But while we were on the farm there was a couple things we used to do. One thing we used to do is, my dad used to smoke cigarettes, and we still took a carton of cigarettes. All three of us, and went down to our old swimming hole down there near Camp Hamilton. And by the time we come home that afternoon, the cigarettes were all gone. Another thing we had a pony and donkey that we used to ride around on the farm. And then what they were for was there was a coal mine on the farm.
Salt and pepper come out there?
And they used these animals to pull the coal out of the coal mine.
Although you might, is there
And these
any
coal miners had a
problems on
shed
that
back
little
there.
Yes.
floor? Why don't you just shake it out?
And another thing they had back there in their shed was a corncob pipe
Okay.
with Five Brothers tobacco. And I can remember filling that pipe up one time and smoking it. And I had a very sick afternoon. But we had a good life on the farm. We had a large truck patch.
Well, you had said about boxing and Grandpa being interested in boxing. When did he introduce you guys to the boxing gloves?
I think we got introduced to the boxing gloves
One thing of that end.
after we moved from the farm out to Will's Corner and then down to McNeil's Camp, which was a lumber camp. And right now I can't remember how we got the gloves, but there's a set of boxing gloves that appeared.
Because my mother had had
And we used to put the gloves on with each other.
although it's not most of.
Sometimes we would take them down to the barn where they kept the horses
Well, and
that hauled the lumber out of from the woods down to where the train picked it up.
Wasn't really a shower.
But,
it was, we used to have like a little club.
And we would box with the other guys there in the camp.
You know,
And see, Bill was 14,
in the corner and,
15, I was 12, 13,
somebody
something
painted
like
it.
that.
It's hand painted.
And
And I
we
had
boxed
done
with the young
some.
fellows down there.
certain things you just.
Dad used to come down, that's about the
have
time
emotional attachment to.
he had his leg broke. He used to come down and sit on the bench and box with all them young guys in the camp
See,
there,
this has no finish on it,
And,
it's oiled.
things like that.
So
can
I
you
put it on
tell
for
how he got
everybody
his
and
leg
then just
broken?
dry it, and it's fine.
This is the
That
one
was a case
My cousin Harry Palmer told me I
of,
should finish my opening table.
he was
knife.
down over the
Just
mountain
boil
at
it.
Mills Camp,
Just before.
just north
But
of,
he didn't tell me till after I had it done.
northwest
Yeah,
of
yes, I
Shellsburg.
mean,
Uh-huh.
They go down
That's
over the
really
mountain
nice
with the
finish.
train
Mhm.
and down there to pick up
Is this the way this
lumber to take haul back to
finished like this?
oh, yeah,
the
I
Gaggigan
mean, they instructed us to oil it.
Uh-huh.
to be hauled around to the mines in Wimber and
This
places
actually
like
goes
that.
out to the kitchen, this chair.
Yes.
And the train
Bring it out there.
jumped the track. And, while they were trying to put it back on, they would put stuff under the wheels of the train so that it would roll. When he moved the train, it would roll back up on the track. Well, instead of it rolling up on the track, the train started to roll over. And he went up the far side away from where it was rolling and jumped off the train. And as he jumped off the train, a set of the wheels from the train came off, and he landed on the wheels with his leg down in, and it broke his right leg off just below his knee. And the knee was bent. I don't remember whether it was bent off to the right or off to the left, almost at what would that be, a 90-degree angle,
Well,
something like that. Anyhow,
90 would be like that.
yeah, it
Wow.
broke it right off over like that.
Wow.
And somehow or other, when the wheels rolled away from him, and he had the lumberjacks there take a hold of his leg, and he told them, he says, take my leg and pull it straight, pull it away from my knee and straight, and line the toe up with the cap of my knee. And they did that. And they put a splint under his leg, and they hauled him up out of that mountain on a truck,
Are they?
took him to the hospital in Bedford, and the doctor looked at it, he says, I'm not gonna touch that. He said, that's almost perfect. So he spent a good bit of that particular winter not doing any work.
Can you tell the story of when these trains slid down the mountain?
Well, this train, after this, I don't know exactly the rotation or how it happened. I think it was after this one train had jumped the track down there that McNeil's went down into West Virginia or Virginia and bought another train, and they had it railroaded back to McNeil's camp. It came back on the main railroads into Winburg and back out through the same route that they hauled lumber into Winburg from the camp. And they got this train back, and they were doing some work on it, and it took about 2 weeks to get it ready to go. And when it was ready to go, excuse me, my dad told the woods boss to make sure that the track people get all the weeds away from the track. Or he said, if you don't, when we go over the mountain and there's weeds on that track, he says, the sand for braking going down the other side of the mountain will never stop the train. So he assumed, or they told him, that the weeds were clear. And Cal Hoffer was his fireman. And as I understand the story, when they broke over the top of that mountain, here, the trackmen who worked on the track and kept supposed to keep it clear hadn't really cleared it. And there were so many weeds on it, it made it just slippy like ice. And that train took off down the mountain. And as I understand it, my dad told Cal Hoffer, get off the train. And my dad stayed on the train. And he said he rode it until he knew there was one curve that it would never make, going at the speed it was making. And as it came up close to this curve, the train was on a pitch like that, and he had to climb up the far side of the engine from the opposite side from which it was going to roll. And as he jumped, the train flipped and threw him up on the bank, and the train rolled down over the mountain. And there's pieces of it there yet today.
Yeah. Was that just a new train? Was that his first trip, or was that the?
That was a new train. I don't know whether it was a new one, but it was a new one to the wood.
That was their first time having it out there on the job.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was the first time it went on the road. Yeah.
No workout in. Did he get hurt on that incident?
No, he didn't get hurt, but everybody in camp was wondering where he was. I don't know why. Cal came in and told us, I think it was Cal that came back to camp and told us that the train had rolled down over the mountain. But we didn't know where Dad was until I don't know how long after we knew that the train had rolled over the mountain, that he came walking in. And he was feeling so bad, about losing the train. And that was the end of the trains for McNeil
Is that right?
Lumber Company. They went to hauling a truck.
Is that right?
Yeah.
At that point?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And that's and that way my dad was no longer an engineer, and Cal Hoffer was no longer a fireman for McNeil Company.
Yeah.
But Dad had the opportunity to buy a truck to haul props. They would go out into the woods where they had these props stacked, piled up, and they would load them on their trucks and haul them into either Central City, unload them from the trucks into I think what's them big rail cars that are closed in?
Boxcar?
Box cars. I think they loaded them into box cars. I know I helped them do that some. And that one winter that it was so bad, I think it was 1936.
a bad winter.
Hmm?
That was a bad winter.
Yeah, it had got so bad, that there was no school, and Bill had already gone to work in the woods, cutting timber, cutting frogs. And I know my dad had another guy helping him, a guy by the name of Ted. I'll think of his name later. They went out, would go out in the woods, and I'd go out and help them load the truck and go along with them when there was no school.
So do you remember any stories your dad told you about anything that happened in his childhood or in his early life that maybe it's
One of the first things I remember him telling, over in Beaver Valley, where their mother and dad were both raised, somehow or other the girls at the school were playing ball out in the field. My dad used to go out on the ball field and tease the girls. And the first time he saw my mother, as I understand it, he says, "I'm going to marry you someday." And he did.
So that's where he met Grandma.
That's where he met Grandma. And she was a member of the Hoffer family at that time.
Yeah.
She lived with the Hoffers. Aunt Mary Hoffer, Cal Hoffer's mother.
Yeah. Well, I wondered where they had met. So, how long after that? Then?
Well, Dad, I don't know how long after that, but in the later years, Dad was 17 years old, I think, or younger when he left and went west. And he used to ride rail cars to travel going west. He'd get down underneath the car, and there was a place underneath there that he could ride, because if they would catch him, they would kick him off the train. And he rode these rail cars west, and he went out into Billings, Montana, and up in that area where he worked in the woods. He even worked as a cook in a lumber camp. And that's where he got involved into boxing himself. Because I can't remember the names of the fellows that were professional boxers in those days that he trained with and he sparred with them. He didn't actually fight them, but he trained with them guys.
Well, what made him quit boxing?
Well, there was a guy took him that wanted him to train him as a boxer, and he took him and went into what they call a stable, where somebody has a place where they train boxers. Young boxers, old boxers are in there. And when he went to this place where the boxers were, he saw some of them that weren't too healthy. Some of them were like punch drunk, you know. And he said, "That's not for me." And he decided he wasn't going to box anymore.
He didn't want to be punch drunk.
No.
Well,
One thing about Dad, when we lived at Ashtola, there was a bunch of young fellas there, and they were toughies. Dad was on the school board, and he used to have to come out to the school to straighten them up because the teachers couldn't. And that's no joke.
What kind of school did you go to?
Hey, those guys were real tough hunkies.
that's what they were, huh?
Anyhow, even though he did that, when those young fellows had any problems, they would come to see Dad. They used to, if there was a gun, they found a gun and they were afraid to shoot it. I think they brought a 45-70 to them one time, and they were afraid to shoot it. You know, they were kids, 16 years old, 15, and but they often came to Dad for help, decisions, what to do.
Used to help me with my POD in school.
You did?
I'd take my book down here and he'd help me. Grandpa.
Well, what do you know about Grandma's life? Did she
Well,
tell
she
you?
had a tough life. She raised 5 bad kids.
Well, she didn't do too bad. She lived pretty long.
Yeah, she lived till she was 99, 3 months away from being 100. Well, what I can remember about Mother, myself, is she was always at home and working. I remember working in the garden with her, planting, pulling weeds, canning. She would be canning vegetables.
When she was younger than that.
Huh?
When she was younger.
When Mother was younger,
Mm-hmm. Did she ever tell anything that happened?
I can remember that she said well, Charlie told me this. Her brother said that she raised him because Charlie and Jim were twins, and Aunt Mary gave Charlie to Grandma to raise. And I think she was 12 years old, is what I remember Charlie saying, and that she raised him.
In other words, she took care of him and Aunt Mary took care of Jim.
Yeah, that's what Charlie told me. He told me that at Grandma's funeral. He went over it again, that she had been his mother.
well, but she raised him, but at the same time, she lived with the Hoffers.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah,
in the
See,
home,
well,
but
she-
see,
yeah.
Aunt
Well,
Mary.
she worked they had a boarding house. And I can't remember, I don't know just when the Hoffer boys were born or where they were at the time, but I imagine it could have been some of them were born there when they had that boarding house at Beaver Valley. That's near Coalport. And I know that she helped Grandma in the boarding house where they
and what was Grandma's name?
Yeah.
That she helped? Wasn't it Clayton?
Well, there were some questions about, as us kids grew up, just what her name was, whether it was Clara Hill, Clara Clayton, and I think, and Mother wasn't really aware of it either,
And she didn't talk about it either.
and she
I was gonna
didn't,
say, she probably,
and she never talked about
I
it,
was gonna say more or less.
and I don't think she really knew it until later in her own life.
Probably when your dad went for the
Now, there
for
could be
the
some
Social
people
Security.
disagree with me on that.
Well, Mom knows the story more, and she had told me more about it, but I can't put it together right now. But
Mhm.
I just wondered if you knew any more, had heard that, or heard any more stories about it or anything. Just in your memory.
Only what I've heard from other people.
Okay.
And Ida Mary and Pearl knew more about it because they talked to the Aish family, Aish's, which was my dad's sister in family. And I never was in conversation with anyone that I felt was responsible or
That knew anything.
that knew it for sure.
Uh,
That supposedly she was Grandma Hoffer's daughter of, and the last I heard was this guy Clayton. And nobody ever knew whatever happened to him.
okay. What do you remember about any religious life growing up? When did you, do you know it, or remember anything about early church life, or was there any?
We were not a real steady church-going family. Dad and Mother went to church on occasions, and there were times that they went on pretty steady. Dad at one time even taught some Sunday school at Berkey,
That was a Brethren church.
Church of the Brethren.
Had they always gone to a Church of the Brethren when they?
Brethren, pretty much a Brethren church, yeah.
Okay.
And when Dad and Mother were young, what's that church in Flint?
Wasn't it a Methodist? Or even John?
No, I think that was the Church of the Brethren.
Was it Church of the Brethren?
I'm not sure.
Where
Your mother would know that.
Do you remember any talk around the house about religion or anything like that growing up?
Dad and Mother never talked a whole lot about religion, except that there was a God and there is a Jesus Christ. And the way Dad and Mother lived was enough, not enough necessarily, but they lived as good as any Christians that I know. In their style of life, in their talking around home, in what they taught their kids, us kids.
Well, what do you remember about your school life? Mom and Aunt Mary were ahead of you by about 6 years to.
No, your mother's how old?
She's 80. She was born in 12, so she's 80,
82.
82.
Okay, she's 8 years ahead of me.
Yeah.
She's about 8 years ahead of me in school. So she was going into high school when I was starting the school. And when we lived at Ashtola, that's when her and Ida Mary started the high school. And I think they both started the same year. I'm not sure of that.
Oh, I think so. Mom told me that she had got promoted a year ahead of herself. She studied one summer and skipped a grade. But she was.
If she did, she's the only smart one in the family.
Yeah, she did, but she regrets that. She felt that harmed her.
Could be.
She thought that it slowed her down. It put her ahead too fast. And she wished that wouldn't have happened, but she did it.
I think they started there, and when we moved from Ashtola to the farm, I can remember them having to walk to school a good bit of the time, which was maybe 4 or 5 miles to school. Lots of times they would get a ride. Not necessarily always, but and I can remember lots of times they would bring friends home. Also, when we moved out to the camp, when we left the Wimber area, your mother stayed with the Hoffers, I think, and finished school in Wimber, where Ida Mary went with the family and did attend school at Cambridge. But I don't think she finished there. You may disagree with me,
Yeah.
and
Well,
she might be right.
yes. What about your brothers? Tell me about some experiences you had with your brothers. I know you tell the one about Uncle Bill at the barn with the truck.
With the truck?
And the incident with this,
Yeah,
I forget his name.
I can't think of his name either. In other words, it was the barn, the guy that was in charge of all the horses that worked in the lumber camp. It was his son. And Bill was like 16, and this guy was, I would say, about 18, and he was a muscle man. He was a real muscled fella. And evidently, like a lot of fellows that Bill was around, it didn't take Bill right because of the things that Bill would say. And they got into a squabble there. And they didn't start throwing punches, they started wrestling a little bit at first, and then it got worse, and got worse, and finally they were all tied up in the corner there, up against close to the barn. And Bud and I, Clarence and I, started over to try to take them apart, and the kid's dad would chase me and Bud away. And about that time, here comes Dad down the road from the house.
He had seen what was going on?
He could see from up there that there was something going on down there, and Bill was involved. So he comes down, and he takes a hold of both of them and pulls them out away from the barn and stands them up, and he says, "Now fight like men." And he didn't any more than finish saying that till Bill popped that guy, and that guy came up off the ground about that high and went down flat on his back. He got up, and he went down again. And Dad said, "That's enough." And that young fellow's dad never said a word that I can remember.
You said that you spent your time running around Bedford County down near Shawnee and all that. At what age did you and Bud and
Well, I was in like the 7th and 8th grade, and not necessarily down on Shawnee, but on the mountain there. We would go back into the woods with the lumberjacks and got acquainted there. And at one time, I had a place back in the woods where there was a great big oak tree, and it had a limb that I could climb up on, and I'd sit down on it, and I would watch for animals. And I got to taking a Zane Grey Western books back with me, and I'd sit up on that thing and read. But in the meantime, I would travel around through the woods, and I think I knew where every apple tree and every freshwater spring was on that mountain. Some of those springs you could go back to, and the water was just boiling up out of the sand.
was this near the Ship Hotel area?
This was close to the Ship Hotel area, and it was down in. A lot of it was in closer to where the actual camp and the sawmills were. Along the stream there would be springs that would spring up and run into the small creek that was there. That I also traveled up on top of the ridge above the Ship Hotel and down over the mountain, where back in there's places where the French, during the French and Indian War there was monuments, still is, I think, in trenches like.
Who put them there?
Well, George Washington went through there during the French and Indian War.
Well, I knew there was a trail up there that he traveled to what was the place he wintered out there?
You're talking about Valley Forge.
Valley Forge, yeah. Didn't he travel over that
Well,
trail?
he traveled that way on his way to Valley Forge.
Yeah. So, but he left monuments up there on top of the mountain.
Well, I don't know as he left them, but they were put there later.
Oh,
The monuments were put there later. And right at the foot of the mountain that the Ship Hotel is called Shot Factory Hill. And right at the base of that, I'm pretty sure that there's a monument there. Because I used to travel back through there and down over the mountain near where Dad wrecked, where that train upset on him. I used to go down in there and pick blueberries, huckleberries, Ida Mary and I.
well, at what age did you decide to, or when you came out of high school, what kind of occupation were you thinking of getting into at the time?
Well, I wasn't thinking too much about any particular occupation. We just looked for a job where we could get a job. And my dad was acquainted with the guy that was in charge, Ward Chris, who was in charge of the Eureka stores. And he got me on at a job there. I started out parking cars in their parking lot and carrying groceries out to the car.
And what age was this then about?
I was out of high school,
High school?
17. And then I finally got in with the guys that delivered the groceries around to the homes in Windber. They had trucks with covers, covered with roofs on, like, and they had curtains down along the side if it rained. And we used to stack those trucks up with groceries and haul them around to the homes all over town. And at that time, you could go to any one of these homes' back door and walk right in and set the groceries down on the kitchen table, turn around and walk out.
And this is in Windber?
Windber, yeah. And then after that, I got into the store and worked as a grocery clerk inside the store, and then I got into the warehouse. And finally, a friend of mine went away to college and left an opening at Callan's Bakery, and that's where I got into the baking business.
What made you decide to go away to baking school?
Well, I worked at Callan's until I was drafted into the World War II. And when I come back from the service, I went back to Callan's, and I could see I wasn't going anywhere there, and I had a little bit of an ambition, so I sent 2 applications. One to get into the Dickinson College to get educated to become an FBI man. And the other one I sent to the American Institute of Baking. Well, as I knew it at the time, I got the word back from the American Institute of Baking first, so I went to school there. Later on, I found out that the application and the acceptance into Dickinson College had come, and my dad didn't want me to be an FBI member, so he tore it up.
So your dad kind of pushed you into the baking business.
Well, now that's a story Ida Mary told me that. I didn't know that he did that.
Well, how many years later did you find that out?
Hey, not too many years ago.
Is that right?
Right.
Wow.
Not too many years ago.
Well, when you were drafted into the Army, what year was that?
1942.
1942.
When was December the 7th, 1941?
Yeah, 41.
And in January I was in the service.
Was Uncle Bud drafted this same year?
I think he was drafted the same year, but later in the year, from what I was.
And what branch of service?
I was in the infantry, and I went in and trained in the infantry and went to training camp in Camp Wheeler, Georgia, for an infantry soldier, and then from there I joined the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. Bud went through his boot camp training. I don't remember where myself, but he went into the engineers, and I'm not sure what engineers he was in. I don't remember that.
But he was a bridge builder, right?
Well, he was in engineers, and they build bridges, yes.
Okay. What rank were you when you went overseas?
When I went overseas, I was a buck private.
Buck private? Where did you go to when you first went over there?
Well, we first went into England. We landed in Scotland, and then we went down to Tidworth Barracks in England, and we did some training there. And then we went back up into Scotland and trained for landing. What am I saying? What am I going to say? We trained to land in Africa, and then we ended up taking the Monarch of Bermuda was the name of the boat. We left England and went to Africa. We landed in Africa in November the 8th, 1942.
Trouble adjusting fats?
No.
So, you were in the war for how many years?
You may.
From
And,
in the war from November the 8th, 1942 till May of 1945
Where did you see first action?
in Africa. When we landed in Africa, we first fought the French soldiers in Africa. They tried to keep us from landing. Of course, they were forced to do that because they were German. They were under German command there at Oran in Africa, and the other parts of the division and the army landed in different areas of Africa, and we fought through Africa up into Tunisia, and I don't right offhand. I can't remember the date that we finished up there in Africa, and we came back to Oran and we trained again for landing, and we went into Sicily. Took us about a month to clean out Sicily, and then somebody else did the landings of Italy. We went back to England and trained for D-Day in France.
Were you ever wounded in the action?
I was wounded. I had a wound in Africa, a shrapnel wound in my left arm, which hit an artery. And at that same time, the enemy had caused multiple injuries to our different soldiers, and some of them were severe, and mine being just an arm wound, although it bled like a spigot. I couldn't get any medication or any first aid up near the front line, in the sense holding my arm like this so it wouldn't bleed several miles to the rear to a first aid station with 3 or 4 other fellas. And we'd get so far and these guys wanted to sit down and rest. And I couldn't sit down and rest because I had lost so much blood. If I sit down, there's no circulation. I'd get dizzy and sick, so I had to keep walking till we got back to the first aid station.
Any memorable experiences that you can think of that would be interesting to tell about that you would?
Well, there was numbers of incidents, like when I was wounded, for instance, the enemy had spotted us. We were behind a mountain, and they fired airburst shells over top of us, and actually the shells would burst and come down and rain, like rain on the troops. We run into some hand-to-hand combat there in Africa near the end of the African campaign. Sicily was a very scary landing in Sicily. We didn't know who was the enemy. Once we got inland so far, the enemy tanks had come up close to us, and there was enemy behind us. We had dropped parachuters, and they were mixed in among us there in Sicily. So until we landed in real early morning, and there was a lot of casualties there. But we finally broke through there, and I can remember getting so far in. It was we were foot soldiers sprinting all the way across Sicily, and I can remember me and 2 or 3 other guys, along with the platoon sergeant, we got into our position, our objective was only that many of us out of a company of soldiers that had got scattered all over the place. And we was up on a big hill and we looked down in the valley there after daybreak, and there was all kind of German tanks down there, and none of ours. And I can remember looking to the rear, and some of our tanks had come up on the top of a mountain to fire on these tanks, and they were just light tanks. And the German tanks blew them off the hill. And Teddy Roosevelt was in among them. Teddy Roosevelt, he was leading the troops up there.
Did he get blown?
I don't know whether he was sober or drunk. As he was noted for heavy drinking. But after that, he didn't get hurt. And I don't know, some of those soldiers might have got out of those tanks. But we never found that out. Anyhow, our artillery eventually fired. It was real scary because we were out there all by ourselves. And and until we had to stay there until our other troops finally got assembled and were able to get up on line where they belonged. We had a similar incident over in Africa where they sent our platoon. We heard that the Germans were going to make a drive, and we didn't know what valley they were coming in. Whether it was the one over the mountains from us or the one that we were in. So they sent our company along with a couple of anti-tank guns, 30 millimeters. They aren't very big.
Yeah.
Pea shooters, out way beyond the front lines to slow down what any attack that the enemy was going to make. That was a scary situation. The enemies come in towards us, turned around and went the other way and came down the other valley, and our General Patton and his outfit was down there waiting on them. And that's what broke the enemy's back in Africa.
Looking back over it, what do you think was the reason that you got through the war?
Well, in Sicily, after going back to Sicily, we got into what was known as Trina, the Trina Hill. There was a very severe battle there. We got blasted with artillery. Our company commander, I was up there with him, and so were some of our other soldiers from our company. And he made us soldiers dig a hole. He said, "You guys dig foxholes." He was standing up on the bank. And we got our foxholes dug, just barely, and we got blasted with artillery, and one of them hit him direct. Just blew him up. And that was a sad situation because him and I had battled across Sicily together. And he was about my age, but he had gone to a lieutenant school, commissioned officers school, and come in as a commissioned officer. And we had been in some battles where he supposedly said he was going to write me up for some stars, some medals, but he never got a chance. I wasn't worried about that. I mean, he was gone. So we went around the hill from there and got up on the back side of a slope, which is a bad place to stop. And I don't remember why we were stopped there. And here again we dug foxholes. And one of the things that tells me that I came back was in that foxhole, while we were there, they made an attack on us. Soldiers come over the hill at us. And we stopped the attack. And during that attack, I was carrying a Browning automatic rifle at the time. Our original guy was wounded and sent back. And I was bent over to reload it, and just as I did, right where my head was, a burst of machine gun fire hit. And I looked up on the hill, and there sat this guy up there on the hill. And rather than shoot him, we motioned him. I had another, our platoon sergeant was with me. And we tried to get this guy to come in, but he just sit there. And all of a sudden, we got hit with another barrage of artillery. And when it cleared, he was gone. We laid there in that foxhole, and if you look up when there's artillery firing, you can see it going over you. And I said to the good Lord right there, I'm willing to go all the way through this, clean to Berlin, and go home and marry a good Christian girl. And that's what I did.
So you think that was life-changing for you right there?
I think it really meant something, because I was wounded in the Hurtgen Forest. I got malaria fever after we had landed in France. At least that's what they told me I had, because I was about like I was when I had typhoid fever. I was out of it, and I went back to England and came back to the outfit. But I never felt like I wasn't going to make it. And I became, our officers were wounded or killed. I became the company leader. I led the company many times, never was asked if I wanted a commission. I said, no, I'll just go on like this until we get another officer. And a good bit of the way through France and Belgium, I was the company leader. And
When you're talking about a company, how many people?
well, there's 4 platoons, and the headquarters is there's supposed to be around 30 in a platoon. This is around 120, 150. And then if there's any attached artillery or heavy machine gun. See, in a company there was a light machine gun, which was an air-cooled gun, and a heavy equipment company was like H Company in the battalion. They would attach a unit of heavy machine gun, which was water-cooled, to a company, depending on what they were going into. And where was I going? But I never was, I've had things happen during the war that are key spots. One was we pulled into a bivouac area getting ready to move into attack, into the front lines, and with a truckload, several truckloads of soldiers of the company. And for some reason, don't go off the back end of the truck. I crawled over the side, walked out around the back of the second truck, and started back to the one I got off of, and some guy jumped off the back of it, and he had a bag of hand grenades.